Welcome back. Today in our Sunday Spotlight, encouraging Latinas to join the field of journalism. The woman behind that effort is a longtime reporter and columnist with the Hartford Courant, who is now working as a columnist for the Inquirer in Philadelphia. We're happy to welcome my friend Helen Ubinas to the program. Helen, thank you for being with us. I can't believe I got you to appear on television. This is very exciting for me.
Yeah, it's a big day for both of us. I'm very excited to be here with you.
So tell us what you started. I saw your tweet about it first. I read the column introducing it. It's called the Enye Fund for Latinas in Journalism, and it's a big deal. Tell us why you decided to do it.
It is. First, I'm going to give you credit because that pronunciation was chef's kiss. Loved it. In October, I started the Enye Fund for Latinas in Journalism, which is my way to help contribute to the advancement of Latinas in the field through educational institutions and nonprofits, through small grants to these organizations.
So many years ago, you and I covered a lot of stories together around Hartford when you were a columnist for the Hartford Courant. And two things about that time, struck me as I was thinking about your fund and about this initiative. I remember talking to you way back then about being one of the only Latino voices in the newsroom. And one of the things I saw is that you said 20 years later, in many places, that's still the case. Does that upset you? Does that bother you?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time being I could spend a lot of time being angry about it. But what I do, what I've done my whole career is to sort of push for change. And, you and I talked about it when we were covering lots of cases. I was the only Latina news columnist at the Courant way back when. When I left, that didn't change. In fact, there was no Latina news columnist anymore. I am the only news columnist here in Philadelphia. And we're talking about two places with huge representations of Latinos. And that's, to me, and should be to everyone, unacceptable.
The other thing, I said two things struck me. The other thing is you took a lot of pride, and you and I sat on uncomfortable benches in courtrooms in Hartford next to each other for a lot of days covering court cases. You took a lot of pride in showing up and doing the reporting and not just being a columnist and looking at other people's stories and pontificating on them. You wanted to go and do the work. This fund will allow future people to do the work. And I think that's an important part of the effort, to not just give out the grants, but let them go do it. Do you agree?
Right. I absolutely want more representation in newsrooms, whether it's in Hartford, Connecticut, whether it's here in Philadelphia. And I want to see more people who look like me, with my background, with the backgrounds of the people who are my family, to be hitting the streets and the communities, to be meeting communities where they are and talking to them where they are and having that representation, whether it's on, TV news or in newspapers.
I saw an interview that you gave, and you said you thought it was remarkable that a Puerto Rican girl from the Bronx has accomplished some of the things you've accomplished. But there must be a lot of other young people who could go down that path if they had the resources. Have you had some experiences where you've talked to people who you think, boy, that young girl or boy would be a great reporter, we just need to give them that push?
Absolutely. I talk to young kids all the time, whether it's for my stories or in schools, whether it was in Hartford or here in Philadelphia. And you see the spark, and I remember not even realizing that this was a path that I could go down, because there weren't people in my family who were in journalism. And when I realized it, it was just this amazing moment. And I want that for other people. I want that for Latinas and Latinos and other people in the communities that I care about, to have the realization that, I can help amplify the voices of the people in my community.
One thing that I recall, one of the cases you and I covered a lot together was the criminal trial for former Hartford Mayor Eddie Perez. And one of the things that struck me about your reporting there, and maybe the reaction to it, was because you were covering a fellow Latino accused of a crime, there was almost an expectation, it seemed to me, from some of his supporters that you not be a journalist and you be a cheerleader.
Right.
Is that something that you have to battle when you're so small in numbers as a representative of an ethnic group?
Absolutely. And I still to this day battle with that. And I remember, being called a self-loathing Puerto Rican because I was there to cover the news. But that's why representation matters, because when you're the only one, it's very easy to sort of fall into that trap of boosterism, or oh, maybe I can give somebody a break because this, whatever misbehavior or behavior that they're exhibiting has been done for years and nobody says anything. But that's not what we're there for. first and foremost, I am a journalist and always will be, who happens to be Latina, a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, who is going to cover these stories as best as I can. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I'm dragging others along with me.
Well, one of the great things about your career is that you have done a lot of monumental, great things. And I wanted to think of an example of something of yours that I read, because I try to, even in Philadelphia, read you as much as I can. And it was the stuff about the paralyzed gunshot survivors. Can you just, in a minute or 30 seconds, explain to people? I mean, you met somebody who said there's not a group for us, and now there's a group for them because of your reporting in your columns. Explain that.
Right. So gun violence is a huge issue here. It was also an issue in Hartford. And what we always kind of forget is that we look at the issue as people who live and people who die, and we forget about the folks who are living with lifelong injuries. And so I covered a lot of those stories. And I realized that, when they told me, like, we need more help, it wasn't out there. And I wanted to sort of do my part. And I helped create what was the first group here in Philadelphia for individuals who were paralyzed by by gun violence.
And I know a lot of people have gotten a lot of good out of that. And if you haven't read any of those stories by Helen, I encourage you to Google it. It's a great series of reports. So tell people how they can help, whether they're interested in supporting this in Philadelphia or in Hartford or anywhere. How does the NEA Fund need their help?
So I am working through the Philadelphia Foundation, which is easily found, just Google Philadelphia Foundation. But and it's self-funded. It's something that I started by myself. And I'm looking for contributions, all the contributions will directly go to organizations who are trying to help get more Latinas in journalism. And I'm going to give you an exclusive, because we just awarded our first grant to a nonprofit of all places, Idaho. And I'll talk more about that. But, I thought it was going to be here in Philadelphia, but the fact is that this effort is nationwide. This need is nationwide. So I'm really excited about it, and I hope that it grows and we continue to sort of get more representation in newsrooms.
All right, and so people can look for the foundation. They can make a donation.
Yes.
It's something that it really matters. We just have 30 seconds left. If you're just a person who gets the paper from your doorstep, 30 seconds, why is it important that you see representation?
Everyone deserves to see themselves in their newspaper, in their media. So if you can help do that, and do it, help me, help them.
All right. Well, hopefully our viewers will. I appreciate it. Helen Abinas from the Philadelphia Inquirer. We appreciate you being with us here on CT22, and hopefully you'll get a lot of good support. Thanks very much. That is CT22 for this week. CBS Sunday Morning is coming up next. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll meet you back here in Studio A next Sunday morning.